So I just arrived here at Poverty Point in Louisiana. Now this is a very intriguing site. I've been wanting to come here for a very long time. It's quite a large mound site that has this huge kind of semicircular, partly octagonal area with raised platforms going all the way around it, where lots of human habitations were linked all around it. Roughly, I think they were 80 feet wide each, and there was a habitation on each one. But what's really interesting is that officially it dates to 1800 BC, which is very, very old in itself, but more research has been done, and they've actually found that it might date to 3800 BC, because there's some evidence in the bird effigy mound that says it could have been at least begin to be constructed at that particular date. So we're going to have a look in the museum, see if there's any clues here linking it to other ancient cultures, especially the Olmec, because they were on the other side of the whole Gulf Sea area. So museum first, then we're going to have a walk around the site and see what we can find. So these are some of the plummets that were discovered at Poverty Point, and apparently some are made of magnetite or hematite, and the red one here is novaculite or novaculite. These are all magnetic. They have drilled holes in them. They've been finely polished by the looks of it. It would have been incredibly difficult to do, but they've done it. So why are they magnetic if they're just plummets for fishing or whatever? They seem like they've got another purpose, and it could easily be for dowsing or locating geomagnetic energy lines, telluric currents, and even, you know, using it to geomance the whole site. We saw similar ones at the Toltec mounds as well, but the fact that they're here, this is much older than the other sites, so they could have originated in this area. But what's interesting is that we find similar things in San Lorenzo, in the Olmec site. You have iron ore, you have magnetic, almost like compasses that were discovered there. So it's interesting that on the other side of the Gulf Sea, really, we have examples of working with magnetism. So we have these very intriguing carved objects dating to at least 1800 BC. Some have spirals on, many are cubes, which is very interesting because, you know, the cube is one of the Platonic solids. So the fact that it was known about and worked with by these people is intriguing. Some are just more abstract, some just look like fun little spheres. And even some have grids on like this, some have cut marks like that one there, and others are just very odd. They look like they're part of games. They really don't look like they could have been sacred amulets, but I just get a sense these were like kind of like for toys or games or something, but who knows. And we do have effigies of certain animals here as well. So we've got some beautiful, very small bird pendants here as well. One of these appears to be made of crystal. That does look like it's quartz. It's very beautifully done. Let's get a close-up of that. A larger one here, which is still only about 2 inches long. Another one here. This one looks like it's made of iron ore or something. There could be hematite or magnetite. More and more reminds me of the Olmec, less and less of North American culture. There's the perfect zigzag here. Let's have some examples of bone fragments here, which are kind of bone awls and needles recovered from the site. Most of them have been destroyed, obviously, but again, the shine on them, it says in the thing here, it says that it looks like they were worked over a very long period of time. So here we have some figurines that were found at the site. 133 of these were apparently found, only 16 are whole, i.e. including heads. but a majority, it says, have their head broken off. And you can see the legs are kind of like stumps as well. And it does appear that this could be the shape of the bird mound. The bird effigy mound is actually a human female figure, which no doubt represented fertility, but could well have also, the mound looks like it's a representation of a pregnant female. So again, this goes back to the sort of theory that this is a fertility energy site, and this represented sort of the mother goddess of the earth. And this was just also pointed out to me that these are very similar to the Venus statues from ancient Europe, Malta and other places. But also, some of them are very similar to Olmec. And I've seen similar examples in Jalapa Museum. And there could be a connection because we've got the same dating, 1800 BC onwards. And it's exactly the same time as the Olmec were developing in Central America along the Gulf Coast there. So, and even this one here has very Olmec-looking features, facial features. So we do find remarkable similarities here. Absolutely amazing. These are used as weights, so this is obviously what they were using to weigh things, to trade with, potentially. But these are gorgets, and so these are probably worn as belts, bars and tables here. I don't know how they work these out as bars and tables, but apparently they are. Very interesting. So there's many beautiful beads that have been found here at Poverty Point. Most of them are made out of red jasper. See the copper at the top here? That would have come all the way from the Great Lakes region down through the Ohio Valley, down the Mississippi, right down here to Poverty Point in Louisiana. And we have examples, many of these red ones are all red jasper, but there are some made of quartz. Trying to find, here we are, here's one made of quartz just here. So they were drilling holes through quartz, which is pretty impressive, as quartz is a very, very hard type of stone. So the fact that they were able to do this at this early age does suggest they had very sophisticated equipment and technology here to be able to do this. This is some very interesting stuff by a guy called John L. Gibson, who wrote it in 2009, just looking at the archaic earthwork model for the cosmos. I'll just read some of it out to you. This is very interesting. Southern Native Americans were fascinated with the sun, moon, Venus and stars. They considered them spirit beings. The sun was the most important and was regarded as the creator as long as 6,000 years ago, possibly 1,000 years earlier. Archaic mound builders sought to honor and control these spirit beings by embodying them in mounded earth at their ritual centers, such as Watson Break, Caney Mounds, and Poverty Point. One theory holds that the ancient mound builders aligned the axes of their earthworks with important celestial events, such as solstitial and equinoctial rise and set positions on the distant horizons. Huge poles once stood on the western edge of the plaza at Poverty Point and are suspected to have marked important solar and lunar sightings. A second theory maintains that builders positioned earthwork so that spacing between them, as well as their dimensions, conform to day count intervals of important synodic periods such as the solar, lunar, stellar or Venusian cycles. For example, the number of days between summer and winter solstices, by marking the northernmost and southernmost points on the horizon where heavenly bodies rose or set, and then measuring the distance with a standard unit of measure, most likely the arm span from elbow to a plumb string suspended from the fingers. Builders were able to lay off their mounds so that scale distances between them conformed to the numbers of days it took that heavenly orb to complete its journey. Researchers have discovered distances, day count intervals at Poverty Point and earlier Middle Archaic earthworks that equate to periods of 1320, 52, 360 and 365, and others which comprise the basis of the New World astronomical calendar. Also, the numbers 13 and 20 and 52 and 360 were all used by the Olmec. This is just something I'm adding on to the work of John L. Gibson here. It's well known that the Olmec developed what later became the long count calendar, the Tzolk'in calendar, and the yearly calendar, and so on and so forth. The fact that we're finding the same numbers here is fascinating. Both of these theories, which incidentally are not mutually exclusive, suggest that archaic earthworks were models of the cosmos. With them, these early native astrologers aggrandized sacred knowledge and ratified their kinship to the heavenly spirits, thereby empowering themselves and their families. Poverty Point may have been one of the earliest theocracies on the North American mainland. Absolutely fascinating. This is the work of John L. Gibson. In 2009 he put up a piece here in the Poverty Point Visitor Centre about this, but the numbers he's coming up with are just so important because it does show a direct connection between the Olmec and the Poverty Point people at exactly the same period they were developing the very early calendars in Mexico. I mean, you can just about make out the sort of ridges that go around in this huge semicircle, but at least you get a sense of how big the site is, because where the trees are in the background is where the site goes to. It's also the area we're standing in, which is called this, the southwest ridges sort of area, a viewing platform, is where all the plummets and many of the artifacts were found. So this would have been like the centre, exactly where they produced all these, most likely. So just behind me is JJ. Just behind me in these trees here is where the main mound is of the site. This is supposedly a bird effigy mound, but we've been looking in the museum, and there's more and more evidence gathering that it's actually that of a human female form without a head but with a pregnant belly. So this is some ancient symbol that is being found in different parts of the world, including Malta and Britain and other places. So maybe it's that, we don't know. We're going to go and have a look, but it's very badly worn down now, so there's not much to see there, but apparently it's huge. It was originally almost 100 feet high. So we're just looking at a kind of metal tube here, but this is what the cross section of what the mound looks like now. It may have looked a little bit different. We're looking from west to east, on the west on the left, east on the right, and we're looking north as we face the mound. Currently it stands at 72 feet high, the highest point, which is about the same as Grave Creek Mound in Ohio, and West Virginia, and you can just see, like, there's the main body of it, like potentially the pregnant belly. So we're up on the main mound here at Poverty Point, and we're looking roughly eastwards. That is pretty much east. We're looking just slightly north of east, and it seems to be oriented to that direction. We're going to check to see exactly what that may be oriented to. It's quite possibly the equinox. And then all around over that side you have like the curved earthworks going around like that. You have the same thing over this side going around like that, and where the visitor centre is through over there, that was the main plaza where possibly people would hang out. But there's also a whole area in the centre where wooden post holes, they think, created a huge circle, and that would have acted like some kind of calendar like you see at Cahokia and other sites. And over here, this is supposed to be one of the so-called wings of the bird effigy mound, and likewise that's the whole body of it down there. And over this side we have another wing, and so that's the idea at the moment. But another theory is emerging that it could be the body of a female, even a pregnant female, which is similar to some of the effigies we've seen. This is looking west, and in those trees, or certainly a while ago, that was all water, so the whole area would have had water associated with it, surrounding it, and possibly going through many of the channels here. And over in this field here, just to the other side of this so-called wing, we're going to take a drive through there shortly. A load of Clovis points were found there. And this really intrigues me. I'm going to go over there and take a walk around, see if we can actually find any, because there could be some there. And that would suggest a date of over 10 to even 12, 13 or 14,000 years old. So the very first part of the site could even be that old. So we're just looking towards the south, and you can see that is Mound E, I believe, and this has not even been carbon dated, so they've no idea how old that one is. And it had a slope going up to it similar to this mound, but it sits outside the main kind of plaza, the main area, which is all this area in front of us over here towards the east, which is all the circular kind of ditches and banks and spaces where the various constructions would be, houses, etc. I wonder what this is made of, if it's made of different layers. We're going to go and look at one of the oldest mounds on the site, which could be up to almost 1,800 years old. 1,800 BC. And that, they say, was done in layers, so I'm suggesting they probably all were, and they were for an energetic purpose. So we're just walking east down the main platform mound here at Poverty Point, which is said to be a large bird effigy. That's debated now. We're looking at a different option for that. But what is interesting is that many of these mounds, they've been opened up, they've been tested. We're going to have a look at one of the oldest ones on the site here. And basically, they're done in layers. They use different layers of red, yellow and white clay, which you find in the surrounding area. And so that suggests they were working with the energies here, because if you just put organic and non-organic materials, you could put bone or something like this in the mounds, or different types of certain remains of animals or so forth. You would get the organic, and then combined with the the non-organic combined with the organic of the chalk, and then you would get a fluctuating control of energy, especially if water's moving through here. And then we have the telluric currents. And I think this was chosen as a magnetic hotspot. I'm convinced this whole huge mound, the largest one probably here in North America, is a magnetic hotspot, and we've got proof they were working with magnetism, because we saw evidence of that in the on-site museum, where you see these different types of magnetite, hematite, and another red version of that as well. So they had an understanding of that, so I think they were working with that. I think combined with the water, the telluric currents, and it's said that lightning hits the mound here regularly. When there's a storm, it attracts to this mound. So therefore, this could be the first, or possibly the earliest, representation of a thunderbird, and that would be really interesting. It could have been where it came from. It may not be at all. It could be a completely, like we're speculating that it might be of a human female form without a head, like the sort of Venus figurines you find in Europe. But the fact that it does attract lightning and thunder is very interesting, because this is what we find in some of the northern areas like the Ohio Valley and so forth, where we find examples and traditions that talk about that. So whether there's any, we haven't really seen any serpent symbolism here, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some. We know they venerated owls and other birds, various creatures that probably existed here, which they hunted and they worshipped and so forth. But yeah, the fact that this is a lightning site, the fact that there's magnetic properties here, they were layering the mounds, and there's actual magnetite and hematite magnetic stones, is fascinating. There's something going on here that has not been fully explained. I think the fact that one of the big problems is they found no human remains here, because it's very acidic, but none of the mounds had burials in them. And I find that really interesting, because all the other, the later cultures, the Adena, the Hopewell, Fort Ancient, and so on and so forth, did have that. And so why would that be? What's going on there? Some people say they may have just got destroyed in the acidic soil in the mounds, but there's no evidence of that, so no one knows what they did with their burials. But like we find in the Olmec areas on the other side of the Gulf Coast, the problem is that the acidity would eat up all the bones, eat up the skulls, eat up all skeletal evidence of who lived here. So there could well have been giants here. That's what I'm getting to. There could well have been a culture here that we just don't know about, and they're just sort of creating remnants, trying to put together what may have gone on here, not what actually did go on. The other thing is, Poverty Point is certainly not its original name. It's actually a plantation here. There are multiple plantations in the area, and you can see the way they've kind of ploughed out most of the mound, most of the site. The reason they called it Poverty Point was because the guys who owned this one made the least money, so they called it Poverty Point, and now they call it the Poverty Point culture. So it's quite sad really that they put these sort of quite stupid names upon these quite brilliant people who once existed here, and kind of just put them down into some kind of weird category based on a bad decision by the landowner just a few hundred years ago. So that's a little bit frustrating. I really, who these people really were is a mystery, but at least the site is still here, and you can actually see some of it. It's not all being ploughed out. There is evidence, there's lots of points, there's lots of artifacts still being found here. And we're just now going to go and look in a field where some Clovis points were found. And to me, this is the most fascinating aspect of this site. Because if the Clovis were here, we're talking about between 10 to 14,000 years ago. So this could have been occupied and worked with as a sacred site that long ago, and not just 1800 BC as is the official date here, although there is some dating that pushes it back to 3800 BC already. So this really could be the origin point. This could be the birthplace of native North American culture here in Louisiana at Poverty Point.